last days of the war that Russia started with the claim of protecting its borders, it is witnessing the war entering its borders. Fortified positions in Russia are now in range of the Ukrainian army. The Russian army had to experience the violation of its own borders on the anniversary of the invasion attempt it launched by violating the Ukrainian borders. The conflict and explosion zones, which were limited to areas inside Ukraine, are now very close to Moscow. The hot developments last night confirmed the information we shared with you recently, that the Russian mainland will soon be in range of Ukrainian missiles. So what happened last night? Let's analyze last night's hot developments and the latest Ukrainian attacks. Enka Daily News has been working hard to compile data from sources in the war zone and international organizations to share with you. You can support the team doing this work through the Super Thanks button to continue their work. The Ukrainian army has started to test its strength with the recent supports it has received. The development, which created a great fear in Russia, was on the agenda last night. The work of Russia, which is trying to gain superiority over Ukraine by using its air force, is getting more and more difficult. Because now Russian planes can be destroyed even on the Russian mainland. The March 1st attack shows how much Ukraine has improved its weapon capacity and range. After a long period of resistance against Russia, the Ukrainian army is gradually moving from a defensive position to an offensive one. Of course, Ukraine, like Russia, does not have dreams and goals of expanding its borders and bringing freedom to the Russian people. The only goal of the Ukrainian army is to ensure that not a single invader remains within Ukrainians' borders. The Yeysk airjet base, located in Yeysk, Russia, is the main base for Su-34 fighter bombers participating in Russia's Mariupol operations. The night of March 1st was a turning point for these Mariupol attack aircraft. Ukrainian Army kamikaze drones attacked the Yeysk airjet base 150 kilometers inland on the Russian side of the Ukrainian-Russian border. As the drones approached the base, warning signs woke up the residents of the city of Yeysk. But it was too late. The drones, which could not be prevented, caused great damage to the base and the Su-34s on the base with a kamikaze attack. The night of March 1st turned into a nightmare for Russia. Russia, which experienced this attack when they least expected it and where they least expected it, has still not recovered from the shock of this incident. With the drones hitting the base, a cloud of dust covered most of the city of Yeysk, especially the Yeysk airjet base. The effects of the drone strikes on the Yeysk military base has not yet been shared with the world, but images of the base show that the Russian casualties are enormous. According to information coming from the vicinity of the base after the attack, the explosions were not only at the base. Explosions and fires are reported in many parts of the city of Yeysk. The intangible consequences of this attack are as important as the tangible ones. With this operation, Ukraine has shown that it can hit Russian targets, not only within Ukraine's borders, but also within Russia's borders. Therefore, it has given Russia a great intimidation. Russia is not safe within its own borders as long as the occupation continues. On the other hand, the Ukrainian army is inflicting heavy losses on the Russian army in other regions where the war is intense. Strategic targets, armored units, and Russian fortifications are being destroyed by the Ukrainian army. Let's look at the details of the attacks carried out by the Ukrainian army in recent days. The Ukrainian army is trying to break the Russian firepower by conducting operations against Russian armored vehicles. The 103rd Brigade of the Territorial Defense Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed an ammunition depot belonging to the Russian army. There were big explosions in the area where the ammunition dumps were located. The images of the attacks carried out by the unmanned aerial vehicle were shared with the world by the Ukrainian armed forces. Donetsk has turned into a graveyard of Russian armored vehicles. Many Russian armored vehicles and tanks have been destroyed by Ukrainian operations in the region and are still being destroyed. Ukraine's 72nd Brigade is a unit that will remain in their memory and go down in history even after the war is over. Most of the operations against Russia in Donetsk were carried out by the 72nd Brigade of Ukraine. Ukraine's 72nd Brigade has been a nightmare for the Russian armored units this week. A Russian T-72B3 tank was destroyed by an anti-tank mine, and a BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicle was destroyed by an ATGM near Volodar. The success of Ukraine's 72nd Brigade is not limited to these two vehicles. The brigade also uses unmanned aerial vehicles effectively in its operations. In the last drone operation organized by the brigade, the Russian T-80BV tank was destroyed, while the T-80BVM tank that came to the rescue was heavily damaged. When talking about successful Ukrainian operations in Donetsk, it would be unfair to mention only the 72nd Brigade. All units of the Ukrainian army are working extraordinarily hard to end the occupation as soon as possible. The 79th Air Assault Brigade is one of these units. There is no passage for Russian armored units trying to advance into Ukraine, because the Ukrainian army has built a steel wall against the Russian army with its ground and air forces. Ukraine's 79th Airborne Assault Brigade destroyed modernized Russian BMP-2M and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles in attacks this week. BMP infantry fighting vehicles are now training targets for the Ukrainian army. But most of the BMPs that enter Ukraine never come back out. While destroying Russian military targets, the Ukrainian army is trying to inflict the greatest possible damage on Russia with the smallest moves. Russia, which is on the brink of economic collapse, cannot easily replace its very expensive equipment. Therefore, it is likely that antique equipment from the Soviet Union will enter the Russia's weapon inventory. The Russian army situation is worsening as it faces a Ukrainian army that has state-of-the-art weapons and uses them efficiently. The losses of the Russian army due to operations organized by the Ukrainian army is increasing. According to the latest updates, since the beginning of the invasion, the Russian army has lost about 150,000 military personnel, 3,395 tanks, 6,638 armored infantry fighting vehicles, 2,393 artillery systems, 479 MLRSs, 247 anti-aircraft systems, 300 aircraft, 2,055 drones, 5,257 tankers and supply vehicles, and 288 helicopters. With the Ukrainian army's operation against the Yes airjet base in the days when Russia's losses were increasing, panic in Russia reached its highest level. The possibility that the vehicles, which have already been discarded and sent to Ukraine, will now be destroyed within Russian borders poses a dangerous situation for Russia. As long as the occupation continues, the situation seems to increase Russia's losses even more, ensure that a prolonged occupation will end with a defeat on Russian soil. Do you think the war will spread to Russian mainland? How will the effects of the Yes offensive reverberate in Russia? Has Ukraine gained the upper hand with this attack?
Stand with Ukraine. Stop the war. Now.